Welcome to the theater.
Is cinema dying?
Movie theater's dead.
What the hell is going to happen to movie theaters?
I hadn't heard of the Laemmle theater chain. As soon as my wife and I moved here, it became second nature.
I know people will ask, who are they? They're the premier art houses in the city. They are number one in that.
The theater business for a while just did nothing but make money.
The rise of television crippled Hollywood.
The other theaters had all closed during the early 50s when television hit.
I don't know if it'll ever come back the way it was.
Of the end for the movie theater.
How many movies am I going to go see this year? Probably two.
Some call it the great art of the 20th century. The Laemmle theaters have always been a bastion of that great art.
Max was the key person in making foreign language films available and accessible.
The French New Wave found its home here.
They show movies the AMC won't show.
If you're from a place where there's no movie theater, the opportunity to see these films in a space like Laemmle becomes pretty monumental.
We've been feeling the pressure of the streaming systems.
A Southern California theater chain may be up for sale.
I would be devastated if they sold it, I have to be honest.
Where am I going to go to see these types of movies?
Let's remember that the movie theater is kind of a sacred experience for all of us.
If the film theaters disappear, the entire ecosystem is undermined.
How much sacrifice is required, in pursuit of the thing that you love?
International public health emergency.
Movie theaters will be closed to the public.
You feel silly and stupid worrying about things like getting movie theaters open when everything else that's going on in our country is going on.
Oh my goodness! Will enough people want to go in theaters to make the theatrical business still viable?
TV, home video, cable, DVD, 4K, having the same conversation for 125 years.
Take everyone you know into a theater, shoulder to shoulder.
The experience of a movie in a theater, that's when the heavens open.
We're always going to want, in some level, that experience of sitting in that movie theater. I'm going to believe that people are going to come back to that.
Thank you for having us.
I mean, I've been doing this podcast called Filmwax for 11, 12 years. Where have you guys been? Thank God somebody finally made a documentary about the Laemmle family and the Laemmle film cinemas. I appreciate it. Well, where do we start? Let me just say, I really enjoyed the film, and I've been a big advocate of course, independent film and cinemas, and the threat that's been ongoing to cinemas for, I don't know how long now, but maybe going back to the 50s. It was also heartwarming, which I didn't expect, that this was actually a highly intensely personal film also as well, about a family. I mean, I had no idea. And so it was really just turned out to be quite a lot going on in the film. And so I guess my first question is, Raphael, did you intend to make that story when you started off in 2017? When did you start? I know it was.
Oh, it was 2019 actually.
It was okay.
So, yeah, no, I mean, the intent initially was I found the legacy story very compelling, and this whole idea of there being a Laemmle in the film business, since there's been a film business, and
that's right.
Also specifically that Carl Laemmle, besides founding Universal Pictures, was also the one who went up against the Edison Trust,
yes,
David and Goliath story. And because of that, we have independent cinema.
Right. So people may not know that, right, that he had the monopoly, right, on the whole technology.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he was sued by Carl Laemmle, which is an amazing thing. Who knew Thomas Edison was such a son of a gun?
And Edison also, was just he just wanted the control. He didn't want to give actors any credit, or because
right.
He didn't give them the power. And he had it's all about sort of controlling. It's the monopolization, and which then stifles creativity, right? So by Carl Laemmle doing what he did, it really sort of opened the floodgates in a way that is truly it's hard to even fathom how astounding that is for, I mean, we're sitting here today because of that. So that was an interesting fact, not the least of which, of course, was then the immigrant story, escaping the Holocaust, coming to America,
story.
and then, trying to figure out a way to support their families, and then doing something which actually sort of, supports an entire industry. So there's absolutely something that is just that kind of the legacy part of it is like, wow, that's fascinating, and I think there's clearly a story here. And what then threw it into higher gear was then Greg telling me about his dad, who was 85 and going to work each day, and then his 103-year-old surviving great aunt, who of course was married to one of the founders. So their age, their my personal story of having parents who died very suddenly. I before I really knew the story, I jumped in and wanted to kind of tell something that was had them in it, and so we filmed them, and then from there, once that happened, a series of adventures down a rabbit hole, I guess. I don't know. It was sort of a kind of a journey about this family business, and that's what it became. It was one of those classic tales of a story about you start a documentary thinking it's one thing, and then it tells you what it wants to be.
And Greg, nobody could afford at the time when the film when Raphael was making this documentary. Yes, you were probably under the most pressure you've ever been as a human being, as a business person, where the business, the chain of cinemas was hemorrhaging, largely, let's say, blame it on streaming. Why not? But
well, I think there are reasons not to, but I'll play into their game. But anyway, yeah.
Anyway, I'm just saying, did you have a sense of what you were getting into as the subject of this documentary? And would you have been like they were inside, your home during intensely personal times, right? I mean, we could read this on your face, where you are really suffering with with this weight. What to do with do you sell, do you not sell the cinemas?
Yeah. I agreed to participate in a documentary about the history and and bringing the what it takes to have a 3-generation 75 80-plus-year-old business, and there are rough times, and the reality is that as it turned out, certainly not as we knew it when we were beginning the process, but as it turned out, we had to face some very monumental choices in situations. And I was just, committed to Raphael and committed to the idea of the film that needed to be part of the process.
Okay, so I want to also let people who are obviously listening or watching understand like that you were the crux, let's say, of the film, for lack of a better word, is this period of time where you and your family are grappling with this decision about whether to sell the cinemas because they were hemorrhaging, dealing with potential offers, and then I don't want to give away too much more, but I guess we know the outcomes. I don't know if it's a spoiler to say what your ultimate decision was, and then once you settled into this idea and could sort of then at least sigh some relief of that, at least the decision was made, and now you can move on, whatever that means. And then within, a couple of months, all of a sudden the lockdown begins, right? So, and then why in the world did you allow the camera into your home? I mean, I'm joking, but there's like it's just what you were going through as a family and the decisions you made in order to keep things going was really personal, so it went to a new level, I would say, in terms of just what we're witnessing here, as viewers.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, certainly it was what Laemmle Theaters was experiencing, but at least in that period, it was what every movie exhibitor, large and small, was experiencing, because now we had a challenge not just to the independence and anti-corporate stand of a family business, holding up during tough times. But you now had to confront an existential challenge for an industry, which was not allowed to operate, certainly not in the major markets of New York and LA, and how that impacted exhibitors across the country, and getting us to that point of reopening now. And what are the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead, I guess.
Please continue.
Yeah, what does it mean? Everyone talking about the growth of, streaming's winning over theatrical. It wasn't even a fight. You have to be in the ring to have a chance to throw a punch. And we were just completely absent during that 13-month period.
Right. It's always about, I get very frustrated with how we always have to sort of rationalize why movie theaters are important, and that most other countries around, that have cinemas, especially in the West, are usually subsidized. The arts are subsidized heavily, whereas here that's not the case. So, there was obviously some money coming in, right, during I assume you during that period, during the lockdown, that you applied for whatever help, right? Government financial help.
We applied, but the PPP program was basically designed to provide payroll for companies that were operational. So when you're closed, it really doesn't do a lot, and it certainly doesn't do a lot for your rent and your utilities and all these other continuing expenses. Now, in December of 2020, which is 9-10 months into the closure, the government did pass the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant Program, which eventually started providing funding by June of 2021. Mm-hmm. So we're well past a year after closure, but that program did end up being, and this is after the completion of the story of the film, but that program did provide funding for Laemmle theaters, for other movie theaters, small movie theaters around the country, for live music venues and performing arts centers. So, it has provided an opportunity for those businesses to return.
The name of the documentary is called Only in Theaters. It's directed by Raphael Sbarge. Did I pronounce it right?
You did.
Good, thank you. Raphael, you also include, other than just the Laemmle family, which is like 4 generations, we should mention Greg's grown 3 sons are also interviewed in the film, as well as the aunt and Bob Laemmle, your dad, right? Greg. But they're also, people that have an invested interest in cinemas, especially the Laemmle cinemas existing, like filmmakers and actors. And so what went into the decisions there was that, how did you select which folks you were going to bring in to talk and to advocate for the cinema?
Yeah, look, here's the thing. This is a film that really speaks obviously about the state of exhibition and cinemas and what's at stake, and it gives us this sense of kind of it brings an immediacy to what's really kind of on the chopping block potentially. Here we are. It's some people ask about well, here we are in New York, and why should we care? We've never heard about Laemmle Theater. What who what's Laemmle to me? And I say, as a New Yorker who grew up here, well, let me introduce you to the long gone Thalia and New Yorker and the 8th Street, and by the way, Lincoln Plaza, which is sitting there empty for 5 years. And did you just hear that Cinépolis 2 weeks ago is closing? Right. So here we are essentially in this sort of whether we like it or not, as New Yorkers who like to, feel like it's all, of course, really about what's in our neighborhood. This is a theater that's representative of what's going on in that conversation. That's just straight up what this is speaking to. But beyond that, this is a family business. And to me, as I started to navigate through this with all the people that we spoke to, the Ava DuVernays and the Leonard Maltons and the, Cameron Crowes and all the filmmakers who came out and said that these theaters or theaters like them, James Ivory, inspired them to be filmmakers, that these were the kind of the spark that kind of really opened the door for them to consider being, dedicating their lives to that. Beyond that, it is primarily a movie about a family and a family's struggles to continue to carry forward their mission. I mean, and we make allusions in the film to, bookstores and family farms. And the question, of course, is, in those cases, in those, 4 and 5 generation cases where, farmers are forced, to really navigate these agonizing choices of how do they survive, how do they fight against these big corporate entities, et cetera. The hope was, in this case, by focusing on the family, is that we would then be able to tell a story that sort of really didn't just speak to cinephiles or people who knew, who Ingmar Bergman is or Truffaut, or, any of these folks that came to lunch at their house, but in this case, also maybe resonate with their businesses. And I mean, on the journey that we've had in this case, which is now we've played a lot of festivals nationally and then internationally, places that did not know about Laemmle theaters, again, were really taken by the family. And so for me, the family was always the way in to kind of try and beyond the headlines, like, such and such a theater is filing Chapter 11, or such and such a theater is going out of business, or the local neighborhood theater that you've always seen just suddenly one day goes black, probably because they want to put condos there. What the heck does that mean, and what is that cost on that, and what is it personally? Where does that get sort of ingested into a family that cares so deeply and whose sole mission has been about supporting artists and the art of filmmaking and the audiences who love them? I mean, that's really what they care about. Like, come have this wonderful experience in this, beautiful environment with soft, wonderful seats, amazing sound, and a beautiful picture, and be able to be transformed through the medium into that place that film does, right? Where it takes us out of our world and into another one, and is sort of a kind of a mental vacation from all the noise in our head, and how powerful that is, and how remarkable this art form is in a theater. Streaming, but it's not a streaming conversation. It really is about a conversation about the art form and how important it is to preserve that.
Right, the relationship between the art form and congregation, because there are so few opportunities to congregate, especially in big cities and elsewhere. We have, I know memberships at churches and temples shrinking, and where do people congregate? Because that is an essential aspect to human nature, it turns out.
And here we are at a point where obviously we've had spikes in depression, anxiety, chronic loneliness,
because of isolation.
And we are social beings. That, God, I mean, what the pandemic ultimately teach us is that, gosh, what we really need to be doing is staying at home and getting more quality time on our couch with our, freaking iPad watching movies. That's what I'm committed to. More of that quality time. Gosh, get out of your damn house. Go actually be in the world. Go connect with people. And I have friends who, wonderful, remarkable, brilliant people who are still honestly traumatized and are not going out, are locked at home, like they can't. They're stuck there, and I pray for them and their journey out. But we, those of us who don't have that specific affliction, the reminder of what it's like to be in a room, where the room and the emotion of the room amplifies the experience. That's the brilliant, the design, the beauty part, is the actual experience with a bunch of people in the dark, and then the emotional journey that you take.
I thought a lot, Greg, when I was watching the movie. A lot of I kind of anticipated, as somebody who thinks about the subject matter here a lot. So, but one thing I had never considered, and it was so presented so vividly in the documentary, which again is called Only in Theaters, is this burden. And it's not a burden; it's the wrong word. The weight, though, of you guys, and that you have this relationship with the city of Los Angeles, and you provide this incredible service. Is that the right word? Service, or again, opportunity to congregate, to enjoy the arts together, and what the idea of selling that off, that what you were grappling with, and I really intensely could empathize with what you were going through at that moment. I could see it. I had not considered that before. Just what the amount of pressure that you felt, and you were going through. Can you speak a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean,
because you don't seem to have any facial tics, and that's good. That's a result.
In Judaism, there's two ways of referring to an inheritance. One is a Yerusha, and that's kind of the traditional inheritance that you have, which is, it's all good, and now you've been passed on this gift from a prior generation. But there's also this idea of morasha, which is a gift with obligation. So yeah, burden is not quite the right word, because burden implies just that it's only work.
It's the weight you're dragging around.
Yeah. So, but there's this. We've been given something, and it's really beautiful. But yes, it also comes with a promise, so to speak, that you're going to keep something and preserve something. And what we were gifted, or what I was gifted, was this idea that we get to operate. We get to bring art house movies to the city of movie making, and that's an incredible responsibility. And it was definitely a challenge to think that we could no longer do that, and in no longer doing that, for whatever reason, that we that who would we hand that off to, who would do it in the same way that we did it, and with the same care and concern, and would that be better for the city of Los Angeles in the long run, to be part of some larger entity? That what opportunities were there, and where would there be something that was missing, I guess, is really what it came down to. And that was absolutely part of a conversation, because it was never just about making the most money.
Really. Well, all I can say is thank you for participating and being so open and present in Raphael's film. And thank you and your family, from me, for the history of what you guys have done for the city of Los Angeles and for independent cinema. It's contributed to my life in a very, very, very essential way. And so, I owe a lot of that gratitude towards people like yourself who have committed their lives to that particular opportunity where you were talking about.
That experience as an audience member, and that experience, of course, as a filmmaker, as an independent filmmaker. I mean, again, a theater that focuses on, films without superheroes. Not that they're bad movies, some wonderful movies, but it's just an opportunity to be able to have another something else presented as an alternative to what is more commercial fare. It's so valuable for us. I think it enriches our life. I believe that Laemmle Theaters, as well as the other ones, we were at the IFC last night. We opened, and another wonderful theater that does this, and the Film Forum. There's so many wonderful theaters in New York that hold this, and New Yorkers, their movies are very important to them, and we recognize it. But as a filmmaker, it's everything. It's literally everything, and it's why I came kicking and screaming into putting myself in the movie. I have a kind of a I come in as an element to sort of represent filmmakers who've been affected by these theaters, and it is a way to tell the story. It's a way to kind of give context. And there's a thousand examples from friends who've spoken to me about it. People have won Oscars because they've qualified at a Laemmle theater, or people who've really owe their whole career to a Laemmle theater. On and on and on. It's as an independent voice, if you're not in a studio, and you can't get to a studio unless you've been an independent voice, this is the stepping stone. This is literally how it happens.
Right.
And these are sacred spaces for the audience, for the art form, and for the filmmaker. And that's hopefully the point that we're trying to sort of speak to. And again, your local neighborhood theater is so much more than just a place to eat popcorn. It actually is. It has so much more context and so much more depth and meaning and so much more contribution that it brings. And again, that's not what I started with. I started with this. Look at this swell, lovely historical kind of context that sets us sets this family in sort of a remarkable, as I referenced, sort of theater royalty family as a way of understanding the history of cinema. But this is ultimately the film became a reminder of what's at stake, why it matters, and why attention must be paid.
Attention must be paid.
In the words of Arthur Miller. Yeah.
Right. It's already had a run in LA. I'm winding it down. It's right. Did you find any theaters to play it in? Hopefully. Thank you, Greg, for getting my joke. How'd it go?
Yeah, we've had a nice run in Los Angeles, including 2 screenings just this past weekend that I was able to appear at, and we're opening now in New York, and starting to roll out around the country. And we're going to find. I mean, there are people operating like Laemmle theaters in large and small communities across the country.
Got them up here in the Hudson Valley, and they're beautiful. And I'm just hope and pray they stay open. Only Theaters is opening in New York on this tomorrow, Friday, as we speak, at the IFC Center, as you alluded to, Raphael, at new Plaza Cinemas, and then hopefully wider, but it'll eventually be available on that streaming thing we were mentioning before. But so more people can see it and hopefully get inspired. But thank you, Raphael, for making this what I think is a really important film. And again, Greg, thank you and making the time today to do this show. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.